devastating. Disco. Dancing Disco AIDS! AIDS!
So I've got a future cult classic here for you. We are talking Benny Loves You. This one is directed by Karl Holt, who also wrote the movie and stars in it as our main character, Jack. I would best describe this one as Ted meets Chucky by way of the In-Betweeners. There's a bizarre little film that kind of sits right alongside the recent Banana Splits movie and Willy's Wonderland. But it plays a little bit more like, as I say, really Ted meets Chucky in a lot of ways. But what's the story? So we have Jack is our main protagonist, and he's essentially a man-child, 35, living with his parents still, a bit of a dead-end job, no girlfriend, etc., and kind of living in the past. He's got all his toys and things like this. A little bit of commentary on kind of geek culture, you might say. And he had this one particular kind of like toy when he was growing up, Benny, that's essentially this teddy bear. Looks like it's maybe a dog or a hare or something like that. Anyway, and through magical forces, Benny comes alive. And, you know, he's super fun, super clever. All he wants to do is get attention from Jack, but also kill everyone else. Kill everyone, especially that Jack is either kind of feels like he's being wronged by, or maybe has attention. We have this kind of new female employee who seems to be interested in Jack, and Ben is a little jealous. And essentially, he just kind of goes on a humorous, murderous rampage for anyone that isn't Jack. What will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So, this goes without saying, but I will say it. This is a tongue-in-cheek movie. It is not meant to be a serious horror film. It is a horror comedy, obviously. Now, I say this because I have seen some reviews that really take the movie to task over the acting. But we'll discuss it. But my take here is the characters are meant to be goofy. They are meant to act like children's TV programs, kind of like this hyper reality. Every actor here is overdoing it. So it's kind of like a hyper reality where everyone's kind of like speaks very kind of cheerfully and kind of is super kind of goofy. Everything's kind of over enunciated, things like this. And I've seen many reviews for this one to say, oh, the acting's terrible. But I think it's by design mostly. So just bear that in mind. I think that is part of the movie. It is a low budget movie as well. This is not the kind of like the budget of things like Willy's Wonderland and stuff like that. But I gotta be honest with you, I was tickled pink with this film for the most part. I thought this was far more of a fun film than Willy's Wonderland and kind of a lot of these other kind of films that I've sort of around this kind of weird mean to be cult kind of film. We've seen a lot of these films recently where they're designed to be a cult film, and maybe this is one, to be fair, but I don't know. This to me was just quite charming. So what did I like about it? So as I've mentioned, it really is as the story is a mix of the movie Ted that we had Mark Wahlberg. It's very similar to that in a way, but you just replace Ted with this little Benny creature who only actually says things that like he's pre-programmed voice box to do, and he's just jumping around and stuff. But he is quite cute and he's quite adorable, and you actually do feel a little bit of an attachment for him, which I thought was good. And he's not kind of like one of these kind of killer toy where they suddenly look evil and things like this. He's always got this kind of chirpy kind of look on his face, and it makes obviously no sense, you know. He just kind of jumps around when he's holding knives and things. They just sort of seem to stick to his paw, stuff like that. It's not meant to be kind of a realistic joke. We just meant to believe it's magic, you know. There you go. But I just thought that kind of like this chirpy little Muppets, and again, you might say like Meet the Feebles and things like this. It's just adorable, but it's also like this, it's like a Tasmanian devil kind of going around being kind of hyper violent, just killing people and animals wherever he kind of wants, basically, all with kind of a gleeful joy. And I just thought it was quite amusing. The humour here is somewhat British at times. That's kind of why, and it has this kind of somewhat of a laddie sense of humour in some aspects, which is again why I make the In-Betweeners reference. It's a little bit more juvenile than that, but it did remind me of that sort of like these, the way the movie was filmed as well, these kind of like little zoom-ins and things like that. The directorial style just kind of reminded me of the British In-Betweeners show anyway. But it's a little more juvenile. It's not really exactly the same. But I nonetheless, I thought the Benny character was a lot of fun, and you know, he's kind of a mix between an actual puppet and CGI. And the CGI isn't brilliant, but I gotta say, I thought it was okay for the film, considering it's meant to be this weird little kind of like silly magical film where this thing comes alive. I thought it was. I thought the effects were actually quite effective, to be honest with you. And you know, we do see maybe a couple of other toys that kind of come to life, and you'll kind of be reminded of Toy Story in a lot of ways. This movie is chock full of other movie references as well. It's kind of knowingly spoofy in a lot of ways, sort of kind of like geek culture, with lines dropped from other films and things like this. I think this movie has a cracking amount of energy behind it. You can tell that people who worked on this film just had an absolute blast, and everyone's kind of just giving it like up to 11 by design. So these performances are sort of like over the top by design, you know, and it's kind of pretty much non-stop. It actually has a reasonable amount of gore. It's never like explicitly realistic gore, but it's quite fun. For example, we have like a guy getting his intestines hoovered out with a vacuum cleaner and stuff like that. So you can, you know, it goes pretty far in regards to its kind of goriness, but it's in that kind of like that playful kind of jokey way. And I gotta say, I quite like the characters of Jack and his kind of love interest, and even kind of some of the other characters like his boss and stuff. I thought were all quite fun, but they are caricatures. They are not to be taken seriously. Okay, so let's just kind of go back to some of these critiques I've seen. The acting, I think, is by far and away the biggest bone of contention. I think some people don't realise it's a joke. That's my interpretation of this film. That being said, there are a couple of more dramatic moments where I did feel the acting never really got that dramatic, if that makes sense. It still kind of like had somewhat of a cheesy, cheap tone to it. So I think that the tone of the acting works for 80% of their film, but there are a couple of instances where I think maybe the acting is a little bit too hokey. I think maybe it goes a little bit too far with the two police characters that we have in the movie. They to me were just a step too far into kind of like to parody, because they just seem above and beyond the kind of like the weirdness that was kind of going on in this movie. And even Holt, I think sometimes there are a couple of sequences which are meant to be a little bit more dramatic. He struggles just a little bit with, but I took this kind of like this weird acting style as part of the tone of the film, if that makes sense. It's meant to be this cartoony kind of tone, along with the actual kind of like animals and stuff like that. And again, I've seen people complain about the CGI. And yes, there are sequences where it looks kind of CGI. It's a low budget movie, which has a lot of effects on screen. I think it worked fairly well. Maybe things that I felt, for me personally, didn't work was the ending was a little bit too drawn out. We have our kind of Home Alone style ending, and to me it just went on way too long, and it kind of got a little bit stale, and especially when we had other sort of characters and things introduced to the movie at that point as well. It went on for a little bit long and outstayed its welcome. The jokes, now humour is obviously somewhat of a personal taste, so not every joke is going to land for every person. I actually found some of the jokes pretty funny. At the beginning of the movie, there's a sequence involving the parents of Jack, which I thought was brilliantly done, and very kind of like dark humour, for example. But there's other jokes here that I felt did fall a little flat from time to time. And like I said, I think the problem sometimes, it does veer a little bit too much into too much of a kind of a juvenile sort of humour from time to time. And the movie's trying to straddle a very fine line between being an engaging and fun movie and kind of having these kind of like these wacky hijinks. And I think sometimes it dips into just a little bit of too silly for its own good in a lot of ways, and therefore becomes across as a little cheesy. But I've got to be honest with you, I actually thought this movie was very, very charming, and I enjoyed this probably a lot more than, as I say, the kind of Willy's Wonderland. What's the other one? The Banana Splits, things like this. And there are other films like the Chucky films as well. It's an easy comparison. But I gotta say, I thought this was a lot of fun and it had a lot of charm. And even though we've seen animated toys before, this one just has such a high degree of kinetic energy and just like this, the character being so cute and kind of like whipping around and having all these kind of like little cute sayings while he's slaughtering people. I thought it kind of gives it a fun little juxtaposition where normally with kind of killer toys movies they kind of look evil and stuff, whilst this one's always got a smile on his face. So I've got to be honest, I actually will recommend this movie, although I do understand some people may not be interested. Either they won't get the joke, or they'll just kind of not be interested in this weird kind of quirky sort of style of humour, because it is super quirky. I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. I'm dying to hear what people's reactions are to this movie. I'm really curious to see how it all, see what people think. So do leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of it. Did you enjoy it or did you not? Anyway, 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.